What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and today when I was scrolling through my subscriptions feed, I came across this video from Sorelle Amore Finance about some common financial advice that makes her cringe. Now, when I saw the thumbnail, I said, oh boy, because there's Graham Stephan, and that's one of my other favorite personal finance YouTube channels is Graham Stephan. The gist of the video is some advice that she commonly gets, including a lot of the advice that Graham gives her that makes her cringe. Now, these are two personal finance gurus who I have come to respect, and they're very sharp minds and they know what they're talking about. So when they disagree on something, it's interesting to learn both sides of that case. And I'm a big fan of taking the contrarian side of things and always researching both sides of an issue. And Sorelle's video was fantastic. I watched the whole thing and I really enjoyed it. And I left a comment saying, Sorelle, great video. Would you mind if I did a reaction video? And I remember thinking there's no way she's ever going to even see this comment, let alone approve me doing a reaction to her video. There's hundreds and hundreds of comments on all of her videos. And I was shocked that she actually replied and she said, go for it. Which, Sorelle, kudos to you, because there are hundreds of comments on every single one of your videos. And the fact that you're clearly reading them and engaging with that many people, I cannot imagine how time-consuming that must be. So kudos, and thank you for being a sport. So without any further ado, here's my reaction to Sorelle Amore's video on personal finance advice that makes her cringe.
Chikemi, my name is Sorelle Amore and welcome to this Finance and Freedom channel. These days, there is no shortage of people giving financial information about what you should and shouldn't do with your finances and money and how to grow it and become financially free. We see so much information everywhere, and oftentimes it's quite contradictory. For every piece of advice that you hear, there's often the opposite piece of advice given, so it can become confusing as well. I'm
going to pause it real quick, and she's exactly right, and that's actually one of the reasons why I'm doing this video. I really appreciated this video that Sorelle did because it is the contrarian side of a lot of the advice you're going to hear on a lot of these financial YouTube channels. And I think it's important because echo chambers do their occupants a disservice, and it's always important to research both sides of any issue, and personal finance is no different. So Sorelle does a very good job here of giving the contrarian side of some popular advice.
In this video, I'm sharing the financial information or advice that I most disagree with, or the stuff that just simply has not worked for me. Number one, you need to be stingy with your food spending. It is very upsetting to me when I see all of these big financial channels talking about how little they spend on their food or how proud they are of their food budgets every week, and it is a minuscule amount that they spend every single week on food. These people have a lot of wealth, and even if they became more and more wealthy, for example, Graham Stephan and Jajik, they have so much money and they continue sharing what they eat, and it's still the same idea. It is still very sad.
So I can see where Sorelle is going with this, and she's right. You're not going to become a millionaire by clipping a coupon and saving some money on your grocery bill, okay? That is not a one-way ticket to uber wealth superstardom. And I guess I'm guilty of this a little bit myself because I do talk a lot about how I manage my food spending. It's not going to make you super wealthy. It's not. But I can tell you over the years I've done this, and I've saved a little bit, but I've saved it a lot. And that has compounded. And I've taken that money that I've saved and I haven't bought more stuff for myself with it. I've invested it and I've reinvested it, and it's grown over the course of several years. I mean, I'm 41 now. I've been doing my own food shopping for about 20 years. I still do the food shopping in my household. My wife and I do it together. It continues to save me money, and I continue to roll that money into investments that continue to grow. Super wealthy? No, but boy, does it add up. And then there's also this. 25 gallons of free gas, paid for by my grocery bill. So I'll stop short of disagreeing with Sorelle. I don't disagree with you. I mean, some of these guys make it seem like if you just skip your Starbucks coffee, you'll be living in Beverly Hills next week. That is definitely not the case. And I always say that eating in and eating healthy is the easiest way to shave money off of your monthly expenses, especially if you're one of those people who finds yourself in credit card debt and you have no idea how you got there and no idea how you're going to get out of it. Eat in, eat healthy is the easiest way to chip away at that credit card debt.
Andrew Jeek once mentioned in a video, which was really upsetting to me, and I even commented underneath that. He was saying that organic food is a joke, and these two comedians showed that it wasn't true. That was a clip from like 10 years ago where people were ridiculing organic food because it's not important. Organic food is extremely important. There are so many studies that show that it is extremely important. I mean, common sense also. Think about how much pesticides and fertilizers and poisons are being put onto your food. Do you think that that's not important? And to believe that comedians have uncovered the truth 10 years ago about, how
All right, so the thing about the pesticides, I could go either way on that. Now, I grow my own tomatoes here at my house, and I don't use any pesticides. Of course, since I don't use any pesticides, that means the Japanese beetles continue to decimate my rose bushes year after year after year. Which brings me to my point on organic food and pesticides. All right. Nobody wants to eat pesticides. I'm right there with you, right? No one takes a can of Raid and goes, no, clearly not. However, I have to play devil's advocate here when it comes to pesticides because there is still a large portion of the globe that doesn't have food security. If we didn't use pesticides here, things like the Japanese beetles and boll weevils and locusts would cause measurable impacts on the global food supply. And while that may not affect me, it's certainly going to affect a whole heck of a lot of people, and it could lead to things like rioting, starvation, death, famine, sickness, war. So it would be nice if we lived in a world where pesticides were not needed, but the root word of pesticide is pest. And if we don't icide the pests, they eat our food for us, and then there's not enough food for us. I wish there were better pesticides. I wish there were pesticides that didn't affect birds or bees and other things. And I believe that there are companies that are working on things like that, and I hope they develop them soon. But for now, unfortunately, there are pests, and they have real-world implications for the global food supply, and I don't see a better way to ensure food stability for the whole world.
Number one, your body's a temple. You want to look after yourself. It is so important to be your optimal. If you are not optimal, how are you going to perform your best in business? Even if you don't have...
She's on to something really big here, because I think this gets overlooked too often. Your health is a direct input to your financial well-being, not just your quality of life, your finances too. Nothing will eat away at a savings, at a nest egg, at your goals in life like unexpected health problems. So eating right, getting exercise is a good financial habit for you to get in, not just good for your health. So Sorelle is spot on here.
The most amount of money right now, you still should be prioritizing your health, because if you have your health in check, you are able to perform better. It therefore means that you can work less hours but more productively. So much of your output is based on how well you can perform. You don't feed athletes McDonald's all the time and expect them to perform their best. If you're in business, this is hard work. Like, you really want to be putting the best fuel into your own body as well. This is why it's upsetting to me, because these channels have such a big reach to a lot of younger people that are aspiring to be like them, and so they think that it's not important to put the right food in your body. So that's number one. Secondly, they're spreading misinformation because organic food is important. Don't use crappy sources to reinforce your idea. Thirdly,
okay, so I haven't seen the video in question here, but this was a big problem a few years ago, and I don't think it's as big a problem as it is now. You see, a few years ago, there was two schools of organic food. There was organic food that was grown without chemical pesticides, without certain fertilizers, without any genetically modified crops, right? There was that. And then there was everyday stuff that just had organic slapped on the label, and it was marked up 80%. Now, I think some of the foods companies have cracked down on this racket of the phony organic stuff, but there is still, things out there like organic salt. Folks, it's salt. It's sodium chloride. It's not grown. It's a chemical, and it's no different. There's no difference between organic salt and regular salt. So some of that stuff is out there. There are still marketers that are preying on your desire to eat healthy to get you to overpay for some things. Now, that is not nearly as big of a problem as it used to be. So I don't know about the date that this debate was happening, this debate in question here. I don't know when that was. But I think a lot of the negativity towards organic food came from some of those outright scams that were out there. That being said, eating organic food is a choice. It's a more expensive choice, and there is science that supports it, that says it's good for you. So if you're in a position where you can make that choice for yourself, great.
if you have some wealth behind you, like these gentlemen now do, it is almost your duty to take care of your health so that you are not a financial strain on the system. Now, these guys are young, but at some point they're not going to be young anymore. And if their health is not in check and they don't put the right habits in place right now in order to ensure that they are as healthy as possible in the future, they're going to be a burden on the financial system. And they have enough money to ensure that they're not like that. Also, if you have all this wealth, but you don't have the health, you are not going to enjoy your money. Now, of course, Graham, Andre, they are hyper successful dudes. Lots of people love them. Lots of people respect them. Well done to them for all the efforts that they put in. Guys, well done. However, you have a platform and you have to be very careful about what you put out there. And if you're encouraging people to skimp out on their food and then putting a strain on their people's bodies, it's just not cool, in my opinion. Now,
so I've seen a lot of Graham's videos on food. I've never really seen him outright advocate eating unhealthy or even suggest eating unhealthy. I have seen him knock the organic stuff, and I've seen him spend a lot of time talking about coffee and how expensive Starbucks coffee is and how he'll never pay for a Starbucks coffee. And Graham, if you're listening, I am the same way. I will never pay for a Starbucks coffee, not ever. But I've never actually seen him advocate for an unhealthy lifestyle before. Just putting that out there.
I'm absolutely not saying that you should spend all the money in the world on your health and the food that you eat, because I know that's unrealistic for so many people. Lots of people cannot afford a lot of great food. However, you have to do your absolute best, and there's lots of different ways that this is possible. There are ways, and you obviously have to work within your budget. So no, I don't believe in the slightest that you have to skimp out on food. I definitely did not do that for myself.
Now here's the good news. You don't necessarily need to make a choice between eating healthy and eating cheaply. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. As a matter of fact, there's some really simple things you can do. For example, spend more time in the produce section and less time in the center aisles. Suffice it to say, the more your food resembles the plant that it grew on, the cheaper it is, right? Think about all that prepackaged junk that's in the center aisles. Everything that was done to it, right? It was driven to a factory, it was chopped up, it was mashed and mushed, and it had methyl ethyl bad stuff added to it. And the factory needs energy and the factory has workers. All that stuff adds to the cost of the item. Now, it may be packaged and marketed in a way that makes it look cheap, but it is not cheaper. It is certainly not more nutritious. The closer your food is to the plant that it grew on, the more money you're saving and the healthier you're living. And healthy living is, like Sorelle had mentioned, is going to make you more productive. It's going to make you happier. So it's a win-win scenario.
When I didn't have money, I also went to the local veggie markets. There was a period of time just before the markets closed on a Sunday. They were closing for 3 days, so I'd go very last minute Sunday, and then they would have huge discounts on the veggies that were available there, so I would stock up. And I honestly think by prioritizing my health, I was able to advance better in everything because I had clarity of mind. Right now, I'm really struggling with no clarity of mind because I am sick, to have a nice fluid train of thought. So if I was operating at my subpar to try to create a multi-million-dollar business the way that I have, you better believe that it would not have worked. Number 2.
So, Sorelle, first of all, I hope you feel better. I'm sorry you're under the weather, and kudos for making a video when you're not feeling well, because I am a total man baby when I get sick. I get man flu and a runny nose, and I am down for the count. I don't consider myself a weak person, particularly. Quite the contrary. But when I get sick, I am a total man baby, and there is no way I will be making YouTube videos when I'm under the weather.
You need to work ridiculous hours to succeed. I just did a video on the dangers of the hustle culture, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about this right now, but you can check that out, link in bio or up on the screen. We have definitely been pushed this idea of the hustle culture over the last few years of how important it is. If you want to succeed, you just have to hustle and grind, work 24/7. And in the last video, there was a few people that commented like, hey, don't you think that the hustle life was what got you to where you are right now? And it is helpful, right? I have said this before. I think there are moments in life where you absolutely have to hustle and grind and have sprints. I talk about life in a series of sprints. It's like sprint, get that goal that you really want, and then make sure that you relax and rejuvenate and bring yourself back to balance. Otherwise, you are going to burn yourself out.
So the more I think about this, the harder it is for me to react, because I've done both. I've done the grind. I mean, when I was a commercial fisherman, we did 120-hour weeks. I mean, we got two-hour naps a day, and we would just work and grind our hands to the bone. I mean, that was hard, painful work, and it was brutal, but it made me the person I am today. There's no way I'd be where I am right now if I hadn't gone through that. Now, that being said, I don't want my kids to ever have to go through anything like that. I could go either way on this one. A lot of people will not be able to make it if they don't grind. And what I would mean by make it, I mean live that stellar, wealthy, comfortable lifestyle. Now, a lot of folks want to do a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, for an average paycheck and financially lead a mediocre life. But you know what? They're family people, and that couple of vacations a year is enough for them, or one vacation a year, or some years without a vacation is enough for them, and they live full, happy, fulfilling lives. And that's fine. If you want that step up from there, the chances are you're going to have to grind. Now, the flip side is, if you're lucky enough to find something that you love to do that pays you, then it's not a grind. It's not work. Not many people are that lucky. Sorelle, you are so blessed because you are clearly enjoying yourself. It shows when you make your videos. You clearly love what you do, and you're earning one heck of a living doing it. So more power to you. That is fantastic. I wish we could all be so lucky. I hope I'm that lucky someday. Please like and subscribe to my channel. But some folks, the grind is necessary. And there are some people that are out there that are working their butt off, scrubbing the inside of porta potties, but you know what? They own the business and they're making a ton of money, and you'd never know it, but they're happy. And some guys are out there doing jobs that pay six-figure salaries, and they just hate their lives, and every day is just a drag. So always be on the lookout for that opportunity, for that thing that pays you that doesn't feel like work. That's where you belong. If you can make that work, then you'll succeed, because it's fun. It's not work. And so you'll be working these ridiculous hours, but you'll be enjoying yourself, and you won't have those bags under your eyes. You won't plop in a bed at the end of the day like, oh, I hate this. You'll jump out of bed every morning. You'll be excited. That's where you want to be. And if you have to grind to get there, it's okay. Also, there's a certain age element to it, right? If you're in your 20s and you're just starting, you know what? Your body can take it. You can do that grind. I'm 41 now. If I were to have to go work on a commercial fishing boat, and I'm in pretty good shape, right? I still do the firefighting thing. I still do all my own maintenance of my house and everything. I'm in pretty good shape. There's no way I could be a commercial fisherman again right now. It would kill me. So there's also an age appropriateness to this, right? If you're just getting started out, you're in your 20s, you can afford to grind a little bit. It's going to make you stronger up here also. But have an exit strategy. Have a plan, because you can't do that forever. It will catch up with you. I got out of fishing at a very young age, and I'm lucky, because you look at those guys, some of those guys that have done it for their whole life, and they look a hell of a lot older than they really are. I'll just put it that way.
Real quick, Jordan Peterson has talked about the price of being exceptional, and to be exceptional in one area of life, let's say if you want to be an athlete or a CEO of a $1 trillion company, for example, everything else is going to have to give. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Do you want to be at the level where there's only one thing in your life that matters and everything else is like really subpar? Because you cannot have your whole life fully in balance unless you are willing to make sacrifices in some areas. So
I have to agree wholeheartedly with Sorelle here. And I'm not knocking people who are CEOs or Olympic athletes, but we've seen it time and time again, these stories, these people who are just outright exceptional, unbelievable savants. They're not happy people. All right? So keep that in mind. If you're one of those guys who's like, I am going to climb the corporate ladder, I am going to be CEO, best CEO ever, you're probably not going to be happy. I have to warn you. The stories and the studies show these are not necessarily the happiest people in life. So think about what really makes you happy, and there are trade-offs. All right? So Sorelle, I agree with you 100% here. Don't forget the stuff that's really important to you in the long run.
Number 3, that buying a house is always an asset. I'm going to say that this is probably one of the most common financial pieces of advice or information that I've seen. People saying that your house is an asset. Robert Kiyosaki, writer of Rich Dad Poor Dad, often says that a house is not an asset unless it is sold. It is a liability. And I have to agree with this. I was always under the idea that I was going to have my very first house to be an investment property instead of a house that I was going to live in. It turned out to be different, but I was able to buy my house outright, which was really, really nice. Now, of course, I know. Not everybody is in the opportunity to buy the house outright. I know. But I'm just...
So I'm going to pause here, and Sorelle, she's right here, because I was one of those people when I bought my first home. Like, I just had to have a house because everybody was making money off of their houses, and they were selling it a month later for all this money. That was in the summer of 2006, and I lost over $100,000 on my first condo that I bought. Between all the money I spent fixing it up and the money I lost in the sale price, I mean, I got cleaned out. I lost almost all the money I made commercial fishing in that house, with the exception of the money I spent to go back and finish college. So home ownership is not a golden ticket. She's right. That being said, I'm still an advocate of home ownership as a way to build wealth over time, especially when you factor in things like tax implications and interest rates and rates of inflation. But it is not a golden ticket. You still have to be smart. And right now in the real estate market, where things are looking a little toppy, I'm not saying we're at the very top, but there's certainly a lot of similarities right now than there was in the early 2000s. So don't think if you can just buy a house, any house, you're automatically going to be wealthy. It's not the case.
Just pointing it out that I think it is a liability, because the expense of having a house that you love, that you want to make beautiful, is so expensive. I have a friend that also just bought a house, and a big mortgage. It's such a fancy house. The mortgage is 40 years. He's a really, really young kid, and he just keeps adding more and more things to his house, and more expensive doodads, as Rich Dad calls it. And you just keep adding things because you're like, $40 mortgage, I'm just repaying it once a month or whatever. It's so easy, no big deal. You don't own the house. It's not your house. You're buying a house that's so far of reach that you're gonna pay 40 years? You're essentially leasing a house. Yes, of course, you're gonna end up buying the house in the end after 40 years, but you're paying double or triple of the price value because of interest. So you might as well, in my opinion, this is what I was...
Okay, so paying double or triple because of interest. Math, I got to challenge the math here, because if you're not paying a mortgage, you're paying rent, right? One or the other. And if you're paying rent, you're paying somebody else's mortgage, because chances are they're not renting it out to you at a loss. They might be. Good for you if they are. That means you're living cheaper than they would be. But when you're paying all that interest, there's a couple of things. Now, Sorelle, I don't think lives in the United States. I'm pretty sure she mentioned she lives in Iceland, and I don't know about the laws in Iceland. But here in the States, interest on your mortgage is tax deductible. And that is the single largest deduction most people have in their annual taxes. So you get some of that money back. The other thing is, when you own your home, you're owning the price exposure of the home, because if the home appreciates in value, it doesn't matter that you owe the bank money. All of that appreciating in value, all of that equity is yours. As long as you keep making the payments and your home doesn't get taken from you, all that equity belongs to you. So the idea that you're paying double or triple, I don't subscribe to that, because you're paying that amount anyway in the form of rent. When you own, you're getting the tax deduction. Also, your mortgage payment is a forced savings account, because every month you're making small principal payments. So that's money that's going into your wealth, and it's a forced savings. You don't get that when you rent. You're forcing someone else's savings. And the other thing I want to factor in here is inflation. All right. If you take out a mortgage, say at today's mortgage rates, right? Let's assume home prices never change. You take out a mortgage today, you're taking out 2.75%, 2.5% for 30 years. Inflation is easily double that, probably triple or quadruple if you really look at it. So over that 30 years, you're borrowing today's money and you're buying an asset with it today, and you're paying back that asset with tomorrow's money that is almost certainly going to be worth far less. So inflation is paying you also. So if you count the forced savings the equity from the growth in the value of the home, the tax incentives associated with the interest being paid off, and the rate of inflation whittling away at your debt and increasing the value of your asset. I mean, home ownership is one of the most powerful tools available to you when done right. Okay, I have to put that asterisk in there, when done right. If you make the common mistake of buying too much house than you can afford and you're going to lose it, then you get none of that. Or if you do what I did and you buy at the tippy top of the market in 2006, right before the largest real estate collapse of our lifetime to date, then you're also not going to see that benefit. So home ownership is not a golden ticket, but when done smartly, it is absolutely a powerful tool.
Always going to do was to end up with a property that was going to be an investment property first and foremost. Or I've also heard people do this beautiful strategy, which is to buy a duplex and they live in one side and the other side ends up paying for the mortgage of the full property, which I think is a beautiful method in order to have somebody else paying for your mortgage. This is a brilliant strategy if you want to have best of both worlds. But buying a property, your first house, that is far too expensive, that's going to put you in debt that far, you're not going to know what it feels like to be financially free. You're always going to have this giant burden, but because we're brought up in this world that debt is normal and that everybody should just have debt and this is just part of life, everybody just assumes that that's normal, but your brain will never be truly free because you've got this huge rock sinking you down. Number 4, the only way to invest in property is with debt. Now, I own 5 houses outright, so you guys should just do it too. The end. I know, it's completely outrageous for me to even.
I like the little bit of self-deprecating humor she throws in here. It's very important. There are too many people on YouTube, especially, who take themselves way too seriously, and I like that she'll poke fun at herself here. So that's important. Always stay grounded.
And consider that this is a strategy possible for a lot of people, and a lot of people use debt. As I mentioned, debt is such a common thing that we have these days that everybody just buys something so out of reach on their credit cards or mortgages, and they are just leasing a luxury lifestyle that isn't reflective of their actual financial situation. You want to become debt free as soon as possible. This is something that you should be striving so strongly for, to become debt free. This is one thing that I really appreciate Dave Ramsey talking about, is to get out of debt as fast as possible.
So Sorelle obviously feels very strongly about debt here, and a lot of the folks, especially millennials in the FIRE movement, financially independent, retire early, they dream about being debt-free. I mentioned this in some of my videos in the past. This book over my shoulder here, The Truth About Money by Rick Edelman, he surveyed his 100 wealthiest clients, and every single one of them had a 30-year mortgage on their home, even though at any given time, any one of those 100 filthy rich clients probably had enough cash in their pocket to pay off that house on the spot. They never did, because that money was more productive in other assets or other investments where the return on those investments was more than the interest on that debt. So they would have been losing money if they paid off all that debt. Now, there's something to be said for the free and independent feeling of not having to log into a bank and make a payment every month and not having to worry about the in matching the out. That said, all debt is not created equal. There is good debt and there's bad debt, right? Credit card debt, bad. All right? If you have credit card debt, you need to stop investing. You need to stop everything you're doing and get out of that credit card debt, because that is slavery, financial servitude. I mean, if you want to make a slave out of yourself, credit card debt is the easiest way to do it. But then there's good debt, right? Like a mortgage. I know Sorelle doesn't like the idea of having a mortgage, but if you can borrow enough money to buy a house at 2.5% interest and you don't have to pay it back for 30 years, folks, in the next 30 years, at the rate inflation is, the price of that house today is going to be like the price of a steak dinner. So debt, when used smartly and responsibly, emphasis on the responsibly, it can be a very powerful weapon at your disposal for building wealth and for developing that financial independence that you've always dreamed of.
Whereas most people, they cannot control themselves, unfortunately, because it's just too easy to let yourself go when you have the capacity to get access to debt.
So she's hitting on a very important nail right here, and I want to zero in on this, and she's talking about self-control. Now that is the key here, okay, because self-control is the difference between taking out the right amount of debt at the right interest rate to buy an asset that pays you a return more than the interest rate on the debt. All right, that is a good investment. And then there's the people who can't stop pulling out that credit card and swiping and swiping and tapping and inserting and all that. And the next thing you know, they get that bill at the end of the month and I can't pay it. Well, whatever. I'll just make the minimum payment and I'll pay it next month. And then they get the bill next month and it's even bigger. Okay. Self-control is the key to the successful utilization of debt to your own advantage. If you have self-control, then the debt pays you. If you don't have self-control, then you will make yourself a slave to the banks and the creditors. It's important to know the difference, to spot those traps, and to have the discipline to make sure you don't fall into those traps.
Yeah. The second reason I'm saying this isn't the best strategy is because something, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, I feel like something's coming on the horizon. We printed so much money last year, trillions of dollars were being printed. We have never been in debt as much as a world, ever. Something is coming. So if you have that much debt and it's not being paid off, it's not checked, you don't own anything. Like, what would happen if everything collapses? It's like, I need the money back right now. Or there's hyperinflation.
So I agree 100% here. I do believe there is something big coming. Either a massive market crash and deflationary death spiral or hyperinflation. I think the powers that be in the United States, and pretty much as the U.S. goes, so goes the world economically, they have a choice between the dollar and everything else. And it looks like right now they're choosing everything else and letting the dollar die. Now they could change that. They could change course any day, and the other thing happens. But there's one thing she talked about, how when you have all that debt and the market goes and then the bank calls and says, oh, times are tough, I need that money back. They can't do that. In 1929, that wasn't the case. When we had the market crash in the 20s and the stock market crashed, the banks started calling the mortgages, where they'd basically call up the homeowner and they say, oh, remember that mortgage you took out that was supposed to be for 30 years? Well, we changed our mind. You got to pay us all back now. And if you didn't have the money, you lost the house. That's illegal now. The bank can't do that, all right? If you take out a mortgage, the bank can't say, oh, well, times are tough, we're changing the terms.
Or there's hyperinflation and you don't own anything. Like, this is why I'm saying debt is not good and it needs to be paid.
I have to nitpick there. If there is hyperinflation, the big winner, the biggest winner by far in hyperinflation is the people with debt. Because you took out dollars yesterday and you bought assets with them, and you get to pay them back with tomorrow's worthless currency, right? Imagine if you took out a mortgage and bought yourself a big, beautiful house, and then hyperinflation sets in, and you get to pay your mortgage with toilet paper. That's what happens to the currency. So, again, not all debt is created equal, but if we are looking at a hyperinflationary scenario, which I would say is a 50-50 possibility right now, then the people with the debt are the big winners. Conversely, if you are owed money, if somebody owes you money, if you made a loan to somebody to buy a house, or if you lent money to a friend, and then hyperinflation sets in, you're the big loser. That's why in hyperinflation, the banks are the big losers, because the banks are owed money. The big winners tend to be people with lots of debt, which is the government, the super wealthy, and farmers. The farmers tend to have a lot of debt on their land. And also the farmers own assets and they generate a return. They grow crops and they raise livestock, things that the price appreciates with inflation. So the farmer's debt gets whittled away to nothing, and the farmers can raise the price of the commodities that they produce on their land, and they can earn more money that way. So again, if we're talking about hyperinflation here, then you want to have debt. Good debt, not bad debt.
Back as soon as possible, because you just don't know. You're trusting that the banks will take care of you, and that's freaking crazy. But this is why I'm saying get out of debt as fast as you can. Or if you're on the market just to buy a place right now, buy below your means. Whatever the bank says that they will lend out to you, just have that. I've been there.
That is awesome advice. And rewind this video and watch it 3-4 times. Buy below your means, especially now. Because if we are on the verge of another housing collapse, you will thank yourself for buying below your means now. That was fantastic advice.
I've seen the lavish lifestyles that people have lived, and oftentimes they always want to downgrade in the end. Graham, hi, me again. Your house is huge. It's so big. Like, why? It's so unnecessary. It's really unnecessary. I mean, if it makes you happy, but the cleaning costs, the furnishing costs, the electricity and power costs, the recurring monthly bills that you're gonna have on that house, oh my God, I don't believe in the bigger is better lifestyle.
So I'm guilty of this, but I haven't always been guilty of this. I lived for years in a 2,000 square foot ranch that if you opened the door, one of us would have fallen out the front door of the house because we were crammed in there so tight. And our stuff was all packed in. I mean, it was so uncomfortable. And we stayed in that house for years because it was my goal to move one more time and never again. I wanted to move into my forever home after I left my last house. So I stayed there probably 8 or 9 years longer than I had to. I could have bought a slightly bigger house and gone into debt all over again, but I stayed in that small house. I lived below my means. I kept my utility bills low. I fixed up the house, and I saved and I saved and I saved, and I invested and invested and reinvested and reinvested. And now I live in a home that is my dream home. And when I take vacation from work, I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to be at my house. I love it here. This place is fantastic. I never get bored here. I love to take care of it. I love to work in the gardens on it. I love to fix things in it when they break. I do most of the maintenance myself. I absolutely love my home. And I worked really hard. My wife and we worked really hard, and we saved to get this place, and we went pretty big, you know. We like to entertain, so we have the extra space for the entertainment. And we're giving our kids a great childhood. I mean, we have the pool out back for the kids to play in. We have a big basement. The kids have a playroom. So there's a lot of perks that come with the big home. Now, there is a cost. There is higher utility bills, and, you know, and it's a lot of work. But a guy like Graham kind of went about it the same way. Graham lived in that duplex and rented out the other half and covered his payment with the rent from the other half of the duplex. And he did that for years. And, you know, Graham got to the point where he had all this money and this wealth that he had amassed. And it's at some point you have to say, what's it for? What are we doing this for? And then you got to live a little bit. And for a guy like me, a big house makes sense because I'm not the kind of guy who wants to travel the world. I've been lucky enough. I've seen a lot of the world already. There's some places I'd like to go, but I'll be honest with you. I like a quiet couple of days at the house relaxing, or a hard day working outside and then relaxing at night. That is my idea of a vacation. So it just made sense for me. And granted, I went bigger, and there's a little bit of waste involved there, but let's just say I think Graham paid his dues with his bigger house. And also, his is the first house on his block. The whole block is under construction, so Graham never lost that investment mentality in his house. He figured he was in an up-and-coming subdevelopment, and he's probably right about that.
Anymore. I really don't. Even my house, it's a 4-bedroom. We use only 2 offices and 1 bedroom. We leave 1 vacant. It's so big, we don't know what to do with it. So we want to downgrade in the near future because it's just, the maintenance is just absolutely insane.
One word of caution, Sorelle, and I'm just throwing it out there. Some point in your life, it may be more than just the 2 of you in there. I can tell you, in my old little 2,000 square foot ranch that I used to live in with my then girlfriend, then fiance, and now wife, when it was just the 2 of us, it was big enough. And then our daughter came along, and the house got a little bit smaller. And then our other daughter came along, and the house got really small. So before you get rid of that 4-bedroom house, it's just something to think about.
The house owns you, you don't own the house. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed my little input into the financial information or advice that I don't agree with. Obviously, I'm just some chick. I'm not a financial advisor. I just share financial information that's worked for me. I just like to have my strategy more taken care of on the inside, because what's more important for me is like security. Yes, I still splurge. Yes, I still, take care of my health, even though right now, maybe not so good, but that's out of my control. And on your deathbed, you're not gonna remember the things you have, but the experiences you had. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you like as well.
Some really good points at the end there. That thing about on your deathbed, the things that you own will not be there. That was fantastic soundbite, Sorelle. Very good way to end the video. I would also draw attention to what she said about security. And I've heard her mention in a lot of her other videos that she values her freedom more than anything else. And I am right there with you. The reason I spend so much time researching and learning about finance and investing, it's all about freedom to me. It's about the ability to determine what I want to do today. This is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it. And there is nobody else that needs to be appeased or pleased or whatever. It's just about the right to determine your own fate. And I think she's doing it right. She's got a fantastic mentality, and I think you could learn a lot from this channel, guys. I highly recommend you check out Sorelle Amore Finance. So there you have it, folks. That's my reaction to Sorelle Amore Finance and her video on financial advice that makes her cringe. Sorelle, you did a fantastic job with that video, especially challenging some of the common advice that's out there. It's very important to maintain that contrarian approach to things. Always look at both sides. And again, echo chambers do their occupants a disservice. So if you're surrounding yourself with only people who agree with you and everything you say, trust me, you're getting bad advice at some point in your life. So Sorelle, also thank you for being a sport and for responding to my comment. I think it's fantastic that you maintain that level of engagement with an audience the size that you have. She's got over 125 or 150,000 subscribers. And there are hundreds and hundreds of comments on her videos, and she still responded to my comment asking for permission to do this reaction video. So, Sorelle, thank you for that engagement, and thank you for being a sport. Guys, that's all I have. Until next time, live small and dream big.